I've been living a double life for 11 years, Marcus said, reclining in the worn leather chair across from me, a strange glint in his eye. 2 wives. 2 families. Pretty impressive, huh? The anniversary dinner I'd spent hours preparing sat untouched on the table between us. 22 years of marriage, all culminating in this moment, his confession delivered like a victory speech. I set my fork down slowly and placed my napkin on my lap with deliberate calm, summoning the neutral, unreadable expression I'd perfected in boardrooms and negotiations. "How fascinating," I replied, my voice steady even as my stomach twisted. Marcus chuckled, clearly amused by my composure. "That's one of the reasons I've always admired you, Nadine. You're so controlled." Janessa would have broken a window by now. Janessa. His other wife had a name. I'm Nadine Brooks, 53 years old, a corporate consultant based in Phoenix, Arizona. I've spent 2 decades guiding Fortune 500 companies through public scandals, legal battles, and hostile takeovers. I built my entire career on navigating chaos and turning it into opportunity. The irony wasn't lost on me now; it was my life unraveling, and I was the crisis. All I ever wanted was a grounded, thoughtful marriage. Shared coffee in the mornings. Honest conversations. Someone who would grow old beside me without pretense. Instead, I'd been living in a well-curated illusion while Marcus built a second life on the other side of the country. "They live in Spokane," he said casually, reaching for his wine glass like this was a regular dinner chat. "Washington's beautiful. Janessa teaches 4th grade. The boys are 10 and 8. I blinked, barely able to process his words. Children. He had children with her. I thought back to our years of painful conversations about not having kids, his insistence that he wasn't meant to be a father, that our careers were too demanding. My chest tightened. "I usually tell her I'm in Dallas on business," Marcus continued, now sounding like he was explaining a quarterly earnings report. "And when I'm here, you think I'm meeting with out-of-town clients. It's actually been a pretty seamless system. But it's starting to fray. The boys are asking questions. Janessa wants more of my time." "And now?" I asked. "Why tell me this now?" He shrugged, sipping his wine like it was nothing. "Because I need to adjust the schedule. It's getting harder to juggle. I thought if I brought you in on it, we could make it work more cleanly." Something inside me snapped into place, not rage, not despair, just a clear, cold understanding. He wasn't confessing because he was remorseful. He wasn't choosing me or her. He was simply restructuring his strategy and assumed I'd comply. "This is still my home," Marcus continued. "I've built a life here with you that's just as valid. I'm not walking away from either family." The entitlement in his tone sent a chill down my spine. There was no shame, no guilt, just the arrogant confidence of a man who thought he could rewrite reality and drag me into it as a co-conspirator. As he droned on about logistics and future plans, I studied his face, the smirk, the gleam of self-satisfaction, the complete absence of regret. Marcus had lived a lie for over a decade and still saw himself as untouchable. That's when I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. He believed I'd remain quiet, poised, and compliant. He had no idea who he was really married to. And soon he would. Marcus's parents were notably absent from our lives. When we first married, I asked about it. "Estranged," he said with a shrug. They never approved of my career choices. I didn't press. Family dynamics can be complicated, and I respected his boundaries. I'm Nadine Brooks, 53, and I built my consultancy firm from scratch. While Marcus scaled the corporate ranks at Redwood Biotech, I navigated the cutthroat world of crisis management. His job involved constant travel, West Coast to Midwest, sometimes overseas. I accepted it as part of our lifestyle, even admired his ambition. When he was offered a promotion to regional sales director, a role that would double his travel, I urged him to take it. "We're a team," I told him, even rearranging my client calendar to align with his limited time at home. We maximized every moment, morning coffee dates, Thursday movie nights, long drives on his weekends off. We purchased a 1920s Tudor-style home in Phoenix's Encanto Palmcroft Historic District. The down payment came mostly from my savings. Marcus's contribution was lighter. He'd been aggressively paying off old student loans. I didn't mind. We had a shared vision. Weekends were spent restoring crown molding and refinishing antique cabinets. He managed the finances and mortgage paperwork while I painted walls and handpicked vintage light fixtures. I trusted him completely. For the first decade, our marriage felt real. Solid. Sundays meant brunch at Tuck Shop. Evenings meant walks through Encanto Park. Nights were spent curled up in the living room, books in hand and jazz humming softly in the background. We were partners. Or so I believed. Looking back now, I see the signs. The work expense account he kept separate. The way he always stepped outside to take certain calls. The confusing timelines, visits to cities that didn't match the conference brochures. His sharp, almost panicked resistance when I once suggested tagging along to a Seattle event. Policy, he said. And his phone, always password protected, always on his person. One morning, while he was in the shower, a text appeared on the screen. It was from Sierra Hart. When I asked him later, he smirked and said, "Craig. From marketing. Sending a joke." For years ago, I found a receipt tucked into a zipped pocket of his travel bag. Women's perfume. Chanel. A scent I didn't wear. It was for my assistant, he told me. Her husband's fighting cancer. We all pitched in. It sounded thoughtful. I felt guilty for even asking. Last spring, a young woman called our landline asking for Marcus. When I explained he was out of town, she hesitated, mumbled wrong number, and quickly hung up. Her voice was nervous. And young. Later that night, I opened his laptop to check our shared calendar. I found recent searches. Best elementary schools in Spokane. Family-friendly neighborhoods in Washington State. Spokane had never come up in our conversations. Not even once. I poured myself a glass of wine and told myself not to spiral. There had to be a reason. There always was. Our anniversary morning started off normally. Marcus kissed my cheek, said he had something special in mind for dinner. I took that to mean he had planned a surprise. I spent the afternoon preparing his favorite meal, beef Wellington, balsamic glazed carrots, chocolate soufflé. I even dusted off our wedding china. When he emerged from his office wearing a tailored navy suit I didn't recognize, I smiled, thinking he'd made dinner reservations. Instead, he sat across from me and said calmly, "I've been living a double life for 11 years. Now, as I listened to him casually describe meeting Janessa at a biotech convention in Portland, I felt my body disconnect from the moment. He swirled his wine like we were talking about renovations, not betrayal. We clicked instantly, he said, eyes glazing with nostalgia. I didn't plan for it to go this far, but... You married her? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. There was the faintest pause. A shift in his posture. Legally? I asked again. That hesitation told me everything. He hadn't just betrayed me. He'd committed bigamy. Exactly. We had a ceremony. She wears a ring. The neighbors think we're married, Marcus said, swirling his wine, as if this entire situation were an anecdote for a dinner party. But bigamy is illegal, I pointed out, clinging to that one technicality like a life raft. Exactly, Marcus repeated, nodding with satisfaction. Which is why it's best for everyone if we maintain the status quo. You and I are legally married. Janessa and I have what she believes is a marriage. Everyone gets what they need. And what about what I need? My voice remained measured, though fury churned beneath the surface. Did it ever cross your mind that I might need a husband who wasn't living a lie? Marcus's expression tightened. I've given you a good life, Nadine. Financial stability. A beautiful home. Companionship. Half of your companionship, I snapped. He waved that off like I was being unreasonable. Don't be dramatic. I've always been there when it counted. I blinked slowly, the way I do when I'm too angry to yell. Are you really trying to sell me on the benefits of your betrayal? He leaned back in his chair as if presenting a business case. Look, our arrangement has worked. You've had freedom to build your career, no demands of raising children, no husband underfoot every evening. Suddenly it all clicked. This wasn't a man who'd fallen into a double life by accident or emotion. This was a man who had designed one calculated, compartmentalized, and meticulously maintained. I was never a partner. I was a pillar in one of his neatly divided structures. I need time, I said quietly, rising from the table. Of course, Marcus replied with that same smug graciousness. Take all the time you need. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. He glanced at his watch. I should call Janessa before it gets too late. She thinks I'm at a conference in San Diego. Just like that, he pivoted, switching from a man dropping a life-altering bomb to a doting husband calling home. I stood frozen as he disappeared down the hallway, his voice muffled but unmistakably affectionate. There was laughter, warmth, love, and none of it was meant for me. I sat alone in what was now my bedroom, staring at the moonlight streaming through the curtains, sleep nowhere in reach. By morning, Marcus strolled into the kitchen freshly showered, dressed in business casual, the picture of normalcy. I've been thinking, he said as he poured himself coffee. We should take a trip. Reconnect. I know this is a lot. I stared at him, this stranger wearing my husband's face, trying to reconcile his calm with the emotional wreckage he'd caused. You still plan to keep both lives? I asked. It's worked for over a decade, he said plainly. We just need to redefine expectations. Set clear parameters. As he buttered his toast with surgical precision, a sharp clarity cut through my fog of shock. He wasn't seeking forgiveness. He wasn't even seeking permission. He just wanted smoother logistics. That evening, I found him in the converted home office, what was once our shared space. He was focused on his laptop, spreadsheets open, business as usual. We need to talk about what happens next, I said from the doorway. He looked up and smiled, that same polished expression he probably used with clients. I was hoping you'd come around. Sit down. I didn't move. I want you to leave. The smile slipped, then quickly returned. Nadine, be reasonable. This is my home too. Is it? I asked. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you have another home. With your other family. He exhaled sharply, like I was being difficult. I've invested just as much in this place as you. That was a lie. I had bought this home with my savings. I paid off most of the mortgage. I had spent years restoring it room by room. I want a divorce, I said. My voice was calm, but unshakable. I've already spoken to an attorney. His face dropped for the first time. Good. Because the man who thought he could run two lives without consequence was finally about to meet mine. The flash of anger in Marcus's eyes was brief, but unmistakable, quickly tucked away behind his usual composed mask. That would be a mistake, he said coolly. Think about the complications, splitting assets, dragging our names through public court records, the embarrassment when people find out how easily you were deceived. There it was, the threat. Not outright, but laced in his tone. Fight me, and I'll expose you as a fool. I'm prepared for that, I replied, even as my stomach twisted at the thought of my clients and colleagues learning about the man I'd shared my life with. My firm's credibility was built on discretion, strength, and strategy. How would they see me if they knew how thoroughly I'd been played? Marcus leaned back, watching me like a strategist surveying a battlefield. You know, he said with quiet calculation, I never thought you were vindictive. I expected you to understand the practicality of this arrangement. Practicality? I echoed, my voice hollow with disbelief. Yes, practicality, he repeated with conviction. Some marriages involve infidelity. Others, separate bedrooms. Some couples stay together for the kids. Ours? Separate locations and responsibilities. That's the only real difference. The sheer audacity of his logic stunned me. According to Marcus, maintaining two entire families wasn't betrayal. It was just another marital quirk, like mismatched love languages. And what about Janessa? I asked. Does she know about this practical setup? A flicker of discomfort crossed his face, the first genuine crack in his carefully constructed armor. Janessa doesn't need to know everything, he said finally. She's happy. She gets the family life she wants. You get your career and your independence. I stay connected to both worlds. Everybody wins. I stared at him, incredulous. And what about integrity? Honesty? Commitment? He dismissed my words with a wave of his hand. Those are social constructs, Nadine. Arbitrary lines drawn by people who can't handle complexity. For the first time, I saw Marcus clearly not as the man I married, but as someone who had no core values. His charm, his ambition, his success, they were tools, not traits. He could justify anything as long as it served him. I want you out of this house by the end of the week, I said firmly. His face darkened. That's not happening, he snapped. Let me be clear, I'm not leaving. This house is as much mine as yours. If you want to end the marriage, fine, but we'll sell and split everything. My heart sank. This home wasn't just real estate. I'd poured years of love into restoring every inch. It was my sanctuary. And Marcus knew it. You should also know, he added, voice deceptively soft now, that I've kept records of some of your more creative client strategies. Nothing illegal, of course. But let's just say, they could be misinterpreted in a less than flattering way if they were ever made public. The blood drained from my face. He was referring to the confidential messaging campaigns I'd built for high-profile clients, entirely ethical, but sensitive enough that they'd cause reputational damage if twisted. Are you threatening me? I asked, already knowing the answer. I'm suggesting we find a mutually beneficial outcome, he said with smooth finality, rather than mutual destruction. Then he turned back to his laptop, casually dismissing me again from the office we once shared as equals. I retreated to the bedroom, mind racing. This wasn't just a man refusing to leave. Marcus was now actively threatening my career, my reputation, and my peace of mind. That night, I pulled out my own laptop and began searching for divorce attorneys. Not just any lawyer, I needed someone who handled warfare. As I scrolled through results, an email alert popped up. Marcus had booked a flight to Spokane. Departure, 8:15 a.m. tomorrow. He would be gone for 5 days. 5 days. 5 days to figure out my next move. And this time, I wouldn't be playing defense. While Marcus was in Spokane, I met with Evelyn Kessler, a divorce attorney known across Arizona for her precision, discretion, and success in high-profile cases. Her office was tucked inside a quiet midtown building, elegant but unassuming, just like her. Bigamy is both a civil and criminal offense, Evelyn said, folding her hands after I finished explaining Marcus's confession. Even if he didn't legally marry Janessa, he's committed fraud against both of you. He's also threatened to ruin my professional reputation if I pursue divorce, I added. Her posture stiffened. So now we're adding blackmail. Your husband has been busy. I nodded silently, overwhelmed but grateful someone finally saw the truth for what it was. What are my options? Document everything, she said. We need concrete evidence, financial records, emails, texts, anything showing the dual lives and threats. You also mentioned you paid for most of the house and mortgage. We'll need to conduct a forensic audit of your finances. The next 2 days passed in a blur. I gathered documents, downloaded years of bank statements, and combed through credit card charges and tax returns. As I dug deeper, the truth grew uglier. Marcus had been siphoning money from our joint accounts for years, tiny amounts, but frequent, diverted to a separate account I hadn't even known existed. And worse, he'd taken out a second mortgage on the house 18 months ago using a forged signature. My signature. Over $175,000 was unaccounted for. Hands trembling, I called Evelyn. This isn't just marital fraud. It's financial fraud, I said. She reviewed the files and confirmed my fear. This changes everything. We need to act fast to protect your assets and your credit." Following her advice, I froze all joint accounts, reported the fraudulent mortgage to our bank, and placed fraud alerts with all 3 credit bureaus. My stomach churned with every phone call, but I pushed forward. The worst discovery came that night. While sorting through Marcus's desk drawers, I felt a subtle shift under the bottom panel. I pried it loose, and there, tucked inside a false compartment, was a stack of documents: driver's licenses, credit cards, even a passport. All with Marcus's face. All with different names. This wasn't just a man living a double life. This was a man living several. "I found something," I told Evelyn during our emergency meeting the next morning. "He has multiple identities. Not just Janessa. He's someone else entirely." Evelyn's expression darkened. "We need to involve law enforcement. This has moved beyond the jurisdiction of divorce court. We're talking potential federal crimes, identity theft, financial fraud across state lines." By noon, I was sitting across from Agent Dana Simmons of the FBI. Calm, professional, and methodical, she listened without interruption as I laid out the evidence. "We've seen cases like this before," she said, flipping through the copies I provided. "Multiple lives, multiple identities. It's often about money, control, and deception." "What happens now?" I asked. "We investigate. Build the case. But in the meantime, prepare for his return. He'll discover the frozen accounts soon." As if on cue, my phone buzzed. "What the hell have you done?" "Accounts frozen. Call me now." "Marcus." I handed the phone to Agent Simmons. "He'll be back tomorrow," I whispered. "We need more time," she admitted. "Try not to reveal what you've uncovered. If he suspects an investigation, he may destroy evidence or run." "You want me to pretend everything's normal?" "Yes, just for a few more days." The thought made my skin crawl. Pretending, after everything, felt unbearable. But I nodded. "I'll try." After Agent Simmons left, I walked slowly through the house, our house. But it no longer felt like mine. The wedding photo on the mantel. The vacation pictures on the hallway wall. The engraved watch I'd given him for our 10th anniversary, still sitting on the dresser. Artifacts of a life I thought was real, but it was all a curated illusion. And I was done pretending. It was all a carefully constructed illusion. In our bedroom, no, my bedroom now, I opened Marcus's closet and slowly ran my fingers across the neat row of pressed dress shirts, color-coded and perfectly spaced. He had always been so meticulous. At one time, I thought it was a personality trait, a love for order, for discipline. Now I saw it for what it truly was, a necessity. The level of organization it took to juggle 2 families, 2 identities, and multiple lives wasn't impressive. It was chilling. The man I had once loved, the man I believed I knew better than anyone, had been nothing but a well-rehearsed performance. And tomorrow, that man would walk through the front door, expecting to find his graceful, well-spoken wife waiting. The wife who, out of practicality, would accommodate betrayal and deception in exchange for a facade of stability. I sank onto the bed, crushed beneath the weight of everything I'd learned, and the even heavier reality that I now had to play along. Pretend. Deceive. Just long enough to trap him in the truth. Had any of it been real? The late-night laughter? The anniversary toasts? Had he ever loved me, or was I simply a respectable prop in the life he wanted others to see? Marcus returned the next evening, slamming the door with enough force to rattle the windows. I was ready. I sat calmly in the living room, legs crossed, swirling a glass of wine in one hand. "What the hell is going on with our accounts?" he barked, skipping any greeting. "There seems to be an issue with the bank," I said coolly. "Some kind of security freeze. I've been trying to sort it out." He narrowed his eyes. "And you didn't call me?" "You were with your family," I replied, letting a controlled bitterness color my words. I didn't want to interrupt. His shoulders relaxed slightly. He thought I was just sulking, being petty, acting out in some small, manageable way. This is exactly the kind of childish reaction I was hoping to avoid, he said with a sigh, pouring himself a bourbon. We need to approach this like adults. You're right, I said, swallowing back bile. I've had time to think while you were gone. Maybe we should talk parameters. His brows lifted, surprised, then satisfied. I knew you'd be reasonable, Nadine. You always are. For the next hour, I sat as he laid out his plan. He would split his time between Phoenix and Spokane, maintain separate finances, and I would be expected to accept certain realities of our marriage. The most important thing, he stressed, was discretion. Janessa can never know about you, he said, deadly serious. Of course not, I murmured, pretending to be compliant. And the frozen accounts? I'll take care of it, he replied with practiced ease. I have resources you don't know about. No kidding, I thought, recalling the stack of fake IDs and financial documents hidden in his desk. There's just one thing I need from you, Marcus added, leaning forward slightly. Access to your personal accounts. Temporarily, of course. My funds are tied up in investments, and I need some operating capital until things settle. The gall was almost laughable. After everything, after draining our joint accounts, forging my signature, and living two lives, he had the audacity to ask for more money. How much? I asked, keeping my voice even. 50,000 should cover it, he said casually, like he was ordering room service. I'll need to move some things around, I stalled. Give me a few days. He smiled, smug, assured. I knew you'd understand. That night, he slept in the guest room again. I lay awake, listening to his phone buzz with messages from his other life. I didn't need to see the screen to know who was texting. The next morning, he left early for a so-called meeting, pressing a disturbingly normal kiss to my cheek on the way out. The moment the door closed, I picked up the phone and called Agent Simmons. He's asking for money, I said. $50,000. This is good, Agent Simmons said, her voice calm but firm. We can use this. Are you willing to make the transfer under controlled conditions? We can track the funds, see where they go. Yes, I agreed instantly. Tell me what I need to do. For the next 3 days, my life became a carefully orchestrated performance. Under the FBI's close supervision, I initiated a transfer of $50,000 into an account they had established to mimic my personal savings. Marcus accepted the money without hesitation and, just as predicted, began moving portions into various other accounts. Each transaction became another breadcrumb, an evidence trail that federal investigators followed closely. Every evening, I kept up my role, quiet, restrained, a wife reluctantly settling into a strange new normal. And every morning, I debriefed Agent Simmons with meticulous detail. Marcus, unaware, continued laying out his delusional vision of dual domestic bliss, growing bolder each day. Everything was moving according to plan until the 4th evening. I returned home to find the lights on in the home office. Marcus was seated at my desk, my laptop open in front of him. He didn't look up as I stepped into the room. Instead, he turned the screen toward me with eerie calm. Interesting reading, he said. On the screen was my email exchange with Evelyn Kessler, our entire divorce strategy, financial findings, and legal correspondence. My heart dropped. I'd been so careful. But I'd forgotten about the automatic sync between my phone and laptop. One oversight had unraveled everything. So this is how you repay my honesty? Marcus asked, his voice low, dangerous. By scheming behind my back? Marcus, I. Save it. He closed the laptop with quiet finality. I've already taken care of your so-called evidence. Deleted. Gone. And I've called in some favors to expedite the sale of this house. My pulse spiked. You can't sell this house without my signature. He smiled, cold, triumphant. Can I? Seems we both have a knack for forgery. As he walked toward the door, dread coiled tightly in my chest. I had underestimated him. Marcus wasn't just a liar or a bigamist. He was dangerous, capable, ruthless. I'm leaving for a few days, he said, pausing in the foyer. When I come back, I expect this all to be over. No lawyers. No frozen accounts. No FBI. Or things will get very unpleasant for you. He closed the door behind him with a calmness that felt more terrifying than rage. I stood in silence, adrenaline roaring in my ears, my carefully laid plan crumbling around me. I immediately called Agent Simmons. He found my emails. He knows. He's said he's leaving for a few days. Did he say where? No. But he threatened to forge my name to sell the house. This changes everything, she said. We need to act now before he moves more assets or destroys evidence. Within an hour, federal agents swept through my home. They documented the false panel in Marcus's desk, collected his personal laptop, and secured hard drives and financial records. Simultaneous raids were underway in Spokane, where Marcus had maintained his alternate life with Janessa. Later that evening, Agent Simmons showed me a series of photographs. Marcus, entering a secure facility belonging to a national bank, accessing a safe deposit box just 30 minutes after leaving my house. We believe that's where he keeps alternate IDs and forged documents, she said. We're obtaining a warrant. Exhausted, I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by evidence bags, paperwork, and agents moving through rooms like shadows. Then my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. Hello. Is this Nadine Brooks? The voice on the other end was cautious, brittle. Yes. Who is this? My name is Janessa Langford, she said quietly. I think we're married to the same man. My heart twisted. Janessa, I said, stunned. I'm sorry you're finding out like this, she continued, her voice cracking. The FBI searched my home today. They showed me pictures, your wedding certificate. 10 years of my life. It's all been a lie. I only found out a week ago, I said softly, unsure how to comfort her. How to comfort myself. They're saying Marcus or Thomas or whatever his real name is. They're saying there might be others. Families, Janessa whispered. Not just us. The words didn't shock me as much as they should have. How many? I asked quietly. They've identified 4 so far, she said, her voice cracking. Different names. Different states. Different lives. Who is he? Who did we marry? Before I could answer, a firm knock sounded at my front door. It was Agent Simmons, her expression uncharacteristically triumphant. We've got him, she said. Marcus, whose real name was Jonathan Wells, had just been arrested at Phoenix Sky Harbor, trying to board a flight to Zurich with falsified documents. She handed me his booking photo. I stared at the image for a long moment, feeling a strange swirl of emotions, relief, sadness, and something that felt eerily like grief. The man I'd shared my home with, built a life around, wasn't just a liar. He was a phantom. Once the FBI began piecing everything together, the evidence came pouring in. Marcus Jonathan, or rather his true name, Michael Chambers, had been living a web of lies for more than a decade. Each woman knew a different version of him, believed a different story. With me, he was Marcus Brooks, a disciplined pharmaceutical sales director, always traveling, always driven. With Janessa, he had been Thomas Langford, a gentle, warm-hearted middle school science teacher, a dedicated dad. The other identities mirrored this pattern. In Minnesota, he was a tech consultant. In Nevada, a commercial pilot. Each story tailored, perfected, worn like a costume. His financial crimes went deeper than any of us imagined. In addition to draining the accounts of multiple women, he had also embezzled hundreds of thousands from pharmaceutical firms through kickback schemes and falsified vendor contracts. What started as betrayal became a national criminal case. I attended his arraignment, watching from the back of the courtroom as the man I once called my husband stood before the judge and pleaded not guilty to 27 federal charges. He never once looked my way. The months that followed were surreal. Slowly, I began reclaiming the fragments of my life. The FBI unfroze my accounts. The fraudulent second mortgage was wiped from my credit report. My home, was no longer tainted by fear, though certain rooms remained untouched. As if my body wasn't quite ready to erase every trace of him, Janessa and I kept in contact, drawn together by the strange intimacy of mutual betrayal. She was gentle with her children, telling them their father was away for work while therapists helped prepare them for the truth. Then, 6 months after his arrest, a letter arrived. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. I'd seen it on birthday cards, love notes, and grocery lists for years. "I never meant to hurt you," it began. "In my own way, I loved you. I didn't finish it. I didn't need to." I burned the letter in the sink, watching the paper curl and blacken under the flame, like every lie he ever told. On what would have been our 21st anniversary, I hired a crew to repaint the bedroom, the last space I hadn't touched. As the primer rolled over the sage green walls we'd chosen together, I felt something heavy inside me finally loosen. The man I married had never existed. But I did. I still do. And that, I've come to realize, is enough. If you've made it this far into my story, thank you. Truly. Sharing what happened to me wasn't easy, and reliving it still brings moments of disbelief. But I've come to learn that silence protects no one but the people who cause harm. If my voice can help someone else spot the red flags, trust their instincts, or take their power back, then none of this was in vain. I'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment, whether it's words of support, a question, or even your own story. No matter what you're going through, you are not alone. This space, this community, is where we can be honest, brave, and heard. Here's the advice I'd give to anyone standing at the edge of betrayal or facing something that makes them question their reality. Don't ignore your gut. I made excuses. I rationalized the small things. I thought loyalty meant silence. But the truth? Loyalty should never cost you your peace, your self-worth, or your safety. You are not foolish for trusting someone you loved. The fault does not lie in being open, it lies in being deceived. So, if you're hurting, confused, or rebuilding from the ashes of someone else's lies, know this: you are allowed to start again. You are allowed to protect yourself. You are allowed to choose truth, even when it's painful. I'm still healing, but I'm stronger than I was. And you can be too. If my story moved you, please like the video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to follow more stories of resilience and truth. Your support means more than you know. Stay strong, stay awake, and above all, stay true to yourself. Nadine Brooks.